welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We are powered by CLNS Radio. You can get the podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, Android, every single app that has podcasts we're available on. And today on the show, we're going to talk some college basketball with one of my favorite writers. He used to work at NBC. Right now, he is at FanRag Sports doing some really interesting stuff. It's Raphielle Johnson. How's it going, Raph?
I'm doing well, Sam. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I think that Raph is one of the people that every time he writes, I make sure and read it because I genuinely learn something that I didn't know before. And I feel like that's rare, right? Like how many writers do you feel like you actually learn something from when you read them? Like I feel like it's not all that often.
Yeah, I think especially when we think about sports, that we're heavily involved in, you can find basic opinions. Those are a dime a dozen, but finding people who actually educate you and find those hidden nuggets that aren't always on the surface, that can be a bit difficult to do. So yeah. I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, no, I do. It's you and Rob over at NBC were always the two that I made sure and read. So I'm glad that you're over at FanRag now. And, what I wanted to bring you on and talk about is that you live in Arizona, I believe, right?
Yes.
So you're out here on the West Coast. And you get a chance to see all of these West Coast teams, as much as anyone does. And let's start with, I think, probably somehow overshadowing the massive Arizona UCLA game yesterday was Gonzaga losing for the first time. So while you were watching that game, at what point did you realize, oh my God, this might actually happen? Like they might actually lose?
I want to say about halfway point of the second half. When I think BYU, I think something that some people may overlook is that last night's win was their third straight win over Gonzaga in Spokane.
Yeah.
So, that's a team that's had success up at the Kennel before. They're an older group. They've had some injury issues this season. They still won 21 games, but BYU, they've got talent. Eric Mika, he's on the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar list, top center in the country, one of the 10 finalists. Definitely have talent. Those guards, they have a green light that I think over 30 rec leaguers just dream about. To be able to just put up shots whenever they want. So, that combination, I'm not too big on the whole idea that a team needs to lose. I just think it's stupid because it's competition.
It's ridiculous.
Why would you need to lose? But I think maybe we saw a little game pressure there, but I think it was more about what BYU was able to do down the stretch and what Gonzaga didn't do.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. Like you said, Eric Mika is one of the best centers in the country. This kid, if he stays at BYU next year, which I have no reason to believe that he won't, he will be an All-American next year. He's that kind of talent. He dropped, 28 and 11 or something last night. Just wild numbers. And he's been doing this all year. I mean, this is not a surprise for people that have seen him. He went on a mission, for the last 2 years. He had a great freshman season before that. And he's back and he's ready to take college basketball by storm. This BYU team, they've been a little bit disappointing this year. I mean, you look at the loss to Utah Valley, for instance, and they dropped games to San Diego and Santa Clara. But it's a young team that I feel like I've never seen a BYU team that is in the bottom 20 in the country in experience. You know what I mean? And that's exactly what this group is right now. So they're going to bring Mika back. They're going to bring the little Haas and Nick Emery and Yoli Childs back. These guys are all going to be really, really good players for them in the future. And I think that this was kind of a message to not forget about BYU basketball, because while they were down a little bit this year, they still have the talent from basically Lone Peak High School to where they can go out and beat anyone on any given night.
Yeah. Hey, that's huge for them. It's a great confidence boost for that team going into Las Vegas next week. Obviously, a regular person is not the greatest strategy to go to Vegas in the hopes to get lucky, gambling wise. But for them, I could see them getting hot and winning 3 straight, in Las Vegas. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility at all.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. They've won 4 of 5, including this road win against Gonzaga. I don't think that they're necessarily on the bubble or anything. I do think they would need to win the West Coast Conference tournament to get in. But
their best win is Princeton outside last night. So Yeah, I'm with you there. They pretty much have to win out to get in.
Yeah. But moving to Gonzaga, does this tangibly change your opinion on that team? Like, where did you have Gonzaga in the country coming into that game, for instance?
I still thought they were one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the country. That really doesn't change much for me.
Yeah.
29-1, it is pretty hard to win 29 straight games, So I don't really have much of an issue, with them losing the game. I think their play down the stretch was a bit of an issue. They looked a bit out of sorts offensively in terms of getting into their stuff and getting the ball to the matchups that favored them the most down the stretch. But I don't think that's something that they can't remedy, with the practices leading up to the WCC tournament and then on to the NCAA tournament as well. So I'm not too concerned about them there. I think with Karnowski, he's one of those matchups that very few teams in the country have an answer for just because of his size.
Yeah.
He's improved as a passer, over his first 3+ years in college. So, that the depth they have, a good 8 guys, a good eight-man rotation, and they can just offer up anything for any opponent, I think they'll still be okay.
So let me real quick just kind of run through some of these ridiculous myths that I think people have about Gonzaga. Like I had someone in my mentions last night say, oh, they always lose in the first round. Well, Gonzaga actually has won 8 straight years in the first round, and they've been to the Sweet 16 last year and the Elite 8 the year before that. They've never gotten to the Final Four. Well, it's hard to get to the Final Four. Like, what do you want? It's very difficult. Oh, well, they haven't beaten anybody. You look at their, just actual wins this year, and it's not as impressive as anyone's, but it's a good list of wins. Yeah. I mean, they beat Florida on a neutral floor. They beat Iowa State on a neutral floor. They beat Arizona on a neutral floor. They beat Tennessee on the road, essentially. They beat BYU on the road. They beat St. Mary's both home and away. This is a lot of really solid wins against top 40 competition, top 50 competition in Tennessee's case. But these are a lot of really difficult wins that I feel like a lot of people don't give them enough credit for. They are a really, really good basketball team who has been as consistent as anybody in the country, really over the course of the last decade, but especially this season.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And the amazing thing about their consistency is that of their top 8 scorers, 5 of them didn't play last year.
Yes.
You got 3 transfers and 2 freshmen in that mix. One of the freshmen, Killian Tilly's injured right now, but you look at so many of these other teams that mix in transfers and freshmen, and they just lack consistency throughout the season. For this group to go 29-1 with all those moving parts, I think you've got to have Mark Few on the short list for National Coach of the Year, if not the favorite right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know that I'd have him as the favorite necessarily, but he would definitely be in my top 5 for sure. And what I will say about that is I think that you did see a little bit of this team hasn't played a lot of close games together yet, right? I do think the game pressure in and of, playing together in a situation like that where there is very genuine pressure on them, they just haven't done that a lot this year, and it was nice to see them get in and out of, or try and get in and out of their sets, even though they weren't successful at it. We'll see if, maybe they'll get some more of that in the West Coast Conference tournament. Hopefully they'll get another matchup with St. Mary's. They'll really, I believe, only get one matchup with either St. Mary's or BYU with the way that bracket's going to be set up. But, we'll see if they can get one of those 2 teams and they can really face some of that game pressure again. In terms of the way this changes them fundamentally for me, it doesn't. I think that this is still probably, in terms of the way that they can just match up with a wide variety of teams, if you made me pick right now one team that I feel most confident will get to the Final Four before we see matchups or anything, before the bracket is set, I would probably still pick this team. Because they can just, like I said, match up with so many different types of teams. If you want to go big against them, they can just run out Karnowski and Collins. If you want to go small against them, they can run out like a Nigel Williams-Goss, Silas Melson, Josh Perkins lineup. They have enough wings to where they can match up athletically with a lot of teams. I'm really just not worried about what I have seen of Gonzaga yet this season. Everything that I have seen of them says that they are one of the most consistent, one of the elite teams in the country. And I'll give you one number here. I mean, even with last night's loss, where it was genuinely like a 30-point swing in Ken Palm's system. They were favored by like 24 according to Ken Palm last night, and they lost by like 5 or whatever. They are still 3 points according to the adjusted efficiency margin better than the number 2 team in the country. That's the difference between the number 2 team and the number 9 team in the country. So like they are still, according to that advanced analytic metric, so far vastly ahead of everyone in the country that it's difficult for me to just like totally write them off. Oh, well, they lost a game. Like, same old Gonzaga. I think it's ridiculous and it's a tired trope.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. To bring up Ken Palm, they're ranked 3rd in adjusted defensive efficiency. They don't really get after teams pressure-wise, forcing turnovers. They just make guys make really tough shots.
Yep.
Their issue is that BYU is a team that, like I said earlier, those guys have the green light. So their forte is kind of taking and making tough shots, and they just happened to fall last night in addition to what Eric Mika was able to do inside.
Yeah, I mean, they go 9 of 24 from 3 last night. Eric Mika, like we mentioned earlier, 29 points, 11 assists. He's a stud, and we'll see what happens with Gonzaga. Like I said, maybe they end up being the number 2 seed in the West instead of the number 1, but their resume is not going to allow them to fall like below that 2 seed line. I don't think they've done enough this year to where they deserve the benefit of the doubt. But let's move on to UCLA, Arizona. Were you at this game by chance, Raph?
I did not. I stayed home.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It was a big day in college basketball. Arizona ends up falling to UCLA in McHale. I feel like that was... I know that like UCLA was, I think, a 1-point underdog or something like that, but I still was surprised to see them go into McHale, and I'm not entirely sure why, but they went into McHale and... they kind of suffocated Arizona late defensively. It was an impressive performance.
That 3-2 zone that they've got, I think it's a great little change-up that Steve Alford can throw at teams, so to speak. With Lonzo Ball in the middle of it, he's 6'6". He's got good wingspan, good anticipation, where you kind of hesitate a bit to throw some of those cross-court passes that you'll see teams attempt against zones. I think the biggest thing for UCLA, in addition to what they were able to do defensively in the second half last night, was their rebounding. Like, they killed Arizona on the offensive glass in the second half. Getting those extra possessions for any team is big, much less one that's as prolific offensively as UCLA. So, you add that win to what they're able to do going to Kentucky and winning there. They beat Oregon at home. Mm-hmm. They've got a really good resume right now in terms of big wins, and that race for the 2 seed in the West, if Gonzaga is the 1 between Oregon, Arizona, and UCLA, is going to be a really intriguing one, going into the Pac-12 tournament.
Well, here's a good question for you. Would you rather be the 2 seed in the West with Gonzaga as your 1, or would you rather be a 1 seed that gets placed elsewhere? Now, I don't know that any of these teams can quite get to the 1 line over like Villanova and Kansas. But where do you fall on that? Would you rather be in the West, or would you rather be the 1 seed and go elsewhere?
I think I'd rather be in the West, personally. Obviously, as you said earlier, matchups are critical, regardless of what seed line you're on. But I just think the geography, especially if you're a team out West, historically, I think it's had a greater impact on West Coast teams than it has in the other direction. So I think if I'm one of those 3 teams out of the Pac-12, I'd much rather hear my name on the 2 line, where you start close to home that first weekend and you go to San Jose, you get through those 2 games. I'd much rather have that.
Yeah, and I was trying to decide that last night, and I'm still not entirely sure where I fall on this, because like I said, I think Gonzaga is still one of the best teams in the country if they do end up on that 1 line. So, like, would I rather play them potentially to get to the Final Four, or do I think that, maybe they're more prone to upset or less prone to upset than other number 1 seeds would be? I think it's a tough call. I mean, theoretically, you're going to get a weaker number 2 than Gonzaga would be as a number 1, and you're going to get just generally maybe an easier road. Yeah. I don't know, though. It's tough. You're right, though. Like, West Coast teams have tended to be a little bit more susceptible to, going east and losing. So we'll see if that ends up happening because, Arizona or Oregon, like at least one, maybe two of those teams, or even maybe UCLA, depending on the way they finish their season, one of those teams is going to have to go west. Probably two of those teams are going to have to, go east. Two of those teams are going to have to go east. So I'm going to be interested to see just entirely how those teams perform when they go east. If you had to rank those three Pac-12 teams, Arizona, UCLA, Oregon, how would you rank them right now?
I would rank Oregon number one. I just like their versatility. I don't think they have as many switchable pieces as they did last year when they had Cook and Benjamin in addition to what Dylan Brooks gives them. But there aren't many guys who are better big shot makers in college basketball than Dylan Brooks right now. You look at their front court with Boucher and Bell and the guards. I think Tyler Dorsey's played much improved basketball over the last month or so for them. Peyton Pritchard, Casey Benson. I just think what Dana Altman has at his disposal from a matchup standpoint, I'd put them slightly ahead of UCLA and Arizona. Those last two is really tough to split up just because, each one on the other team's home floor. Arizona went out to LA and won. UCLA went to Tucson and won. I would go UCLA, not so much for the recency bias, but their improvement defensively.
Yep.
They don't have to hold teams under 70 points because of how good they are offensively. But, if they can hold them 75 or so as they've done in recent games, I think they'll be in very good position to get to a Final Four.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that I would put Oregon 1, UCLA 2, Arizona 3. I really just trust Oregon's defense most out of that group. Jordan Bell has been tremendous on that end this season. They still have a big shot blocker inside and Chris Boucher. Those guys just kind of clean up a lot. And, once you get into the tournament, Dana Altman is just tremendous at exploiting matchups and making things happen for your team. Real quick, before we move on, we have an advertisement. It is everyone's favorite podcast advertisement, SeatGeek. So the NBA and college basketball season is in full swing, and SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to your favorite team's games. With SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. There's nothing like being in the stadium for the biggest plays of the year, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for a great value. I just bought SeatGeek tickets to a Kings game last week, and it was super easy. I have the app on my phone, and it's just so nice to be able to shop for tickets and go anywhere and be anywhere within a few taps. It's designed to make your buying experience easier than ever. SeatGeek saves you time and money by searching multiple ticket sites to compare prices and amazing deals. And to get you the most bang for your buck, SeatGeek grades every ticket based on value to help you immediately identify the best seats that fit your budget. Every purchase is fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets on SeatGeek with confidence. And it doesn't end with sports. SeatGeek also has plenty of concert, comedy, and theater tickets available. Best of all, my listeners get a $20 rebate off of their first SeatGeek purchase. To get your $20 rebate on tickets, download the SeatGeek app, go to settings, and add a promo code. Enter promo code GameTheory, GAME, no space, THEORY. SeatGeek will send you $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase. So download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code GameTheory today. One of the events that is happening today is literally right around the road from where I live. It's 2 blocks. It's the Oscars. You can't get tickets to the Oscars, but Raph, how many Oscar movies have you even seen this year?
None.
None?
None.
Yeah, this is one of those years. I mean, I used to work in the entertainment industry, and I just don't care about the movies that came out this year, or at least the quote unquote contenders. I saw Hell or High Water. I have Moonlight and Manchester by the Sea screeners just from knowing people around here, and I just haven't found the time to pop them in yet. I just don't. I can't bring myself to care about a lot of these movies this year.
Yeah, for me. It's not so much about not caring as it is I just rather watch basketball, whether it's college or the NBA. So that's where I've usually spent most of my time. I do plan on seeing Hidden Figures pretty soon. So
Yeah, I saw that too.
all right, yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out. But yeah, I don't know. Between late October and the Final Four weekend, you're pretty much not getting me to do anything that isn't basketball related. You know,
it's hard to find time.
Yeah.
Like I just like force myself essentially sometimes to just like turn things off. Like more of it's my girlfriend than anything. Like I have to turn my computer off, or just put my phone away, like, and put it on the other couch where I'm sitting, or from where I'm sitting. Like I just have to unplug sometimes and like really get away.
Yeah, I get to the gym consistently, but
yeah.
Kind of hard to do much else.
It is very difficult to do much else. So other stuff that happened on Saturday, let's just talk about some of the other quick upsets that occurred around the country. So Iowa State beats Baylor, Miami beats Duke, Michigan beats Purdue. I believe that Iowa beat Maryland. Were any of those like true surprises to you? Like which one really stood out to you and like kind of said something?
I think the surprise for me was the way in which Iowa beat Maryland, because Maryland's looking like a team that's running out of gas right now. I think they've lost 3 straight. And their second half performances in recent weeks have been, I don't know if I'd say poor, but they just look like a tired basketball team. Maybe part of that's with having 3 freshmen in your starting lineup, and they're kind of used to their seasons dialing down at this point in the calendar, as opposed to really ramping up with the conference tournaments and the NCAA tournament. But I think that would probably be the biggest surprise for me in terms of what happened yesterday.
Yeah, like you kind of just said, Kevin Huerter has been in single figures in 3 of his last 4 games. It feels like Anthony Cowan hasn't been all that good during this stretch. Justin Jackson, again, has been in single figures 4 of his last 5 games in terms of scoring. So, maybe that's right. Maybe it is just a situation where freshmen are kind of hitting this wall, and Melo Trimble has been kind of unbelievable outside of yesterday's performance, but like he's been really good. You look at the Northwestern game, he drops 32 or something. He drops 27 against Wisconsin, 24 against or maybe 10 or something against like Ohio State in like an efficient way. Like he was a really, really good basketball player leading into this game, and I just don't know if he's enough right now for them to get it done. Yeah,
I think another big issue for Maryland yesterday is that they attempted 34 3-pointers.
It's a lot. And
yeah, that's a lot. That's way too many for them. Like 34 of their 58 shots from the field were 3-pointers. And that's not how they operate. When you don't have a low post scorer, they didn't have that even with Tchaikovsky healthy. Mm-hmm. When you don't have that kind of guy, the dribble penetration becomes that much more important. And they tried to play this drive and kick game that's like right up Iowa's alley. Ended up getting blown out yesterday.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if this Maryland team can kind of get things together. Like you said, they've lost their last 3. They've lost 5 of 7 here. It's kind of confirming like what a lot of the advanced analytics have said about them last year, but I feel like a lot of people were very skeptical about how the analytics perform in regard to Maryland, because they do tend to be really good in late game situations, in large part due to Melo Trimble being able to have the ball. So I don't think that this team is like a second weekend team yet. I really like them for next year, but we'll see. I mean, maybe they can get something together, right?
Yeah, I'd expect them to get through their first game, but with this recent trend, they're really treading in dangerous waters here. You end up in like a 7-10 or an 8-9 game, those are effectively toss-ups. So, they really need to get going here, maybe close out with 2 wins and do well in the Big Ten tournament, which is in their backyard. God bless realignment. But yeah, they really need to figure out something here, beginning with Rutgers on the road Wednesday night.
Yeah, that's going to be a big game because it's going to actually allow them maybe to get some momentum. Does what's happening with Baylor concern you at all? They've lost 3 of 4. I believe they've lost something like 4 of 7 or 5 of 8 or something like that. Does anything about what's happening with them right now worry you about them going forward?
You know what? Man, it's tough because I think a small part of it can be put on the fact that they're playing in a tough league.
Yeah.
They played Kansas twice during this stretch. You go to Texas Tech in another game, that's a concern. That's a tough place to win a game. Of course, they lost there. And Iowa State on the road as well. I think my biggest concern from Saturday specifically would be Manu Lecomte. For him to go scoreless and just play 15 minutes, I don't know if it's a health issue or just him struggling or what, but he's a critical piece for them. Prior to that, you had the Al Freeman suspension, where he was out of the rotation for 3 games. Man, I always hesitate to hop on a bandwagon of teams with like perimeter issues going into March, and that really seems to be the case with Baylor right now.
Yeah, and the weird thing with LeConte is that, like, you look at his last, set of games during this run even, and he'd been relatively consistent. Like, he scored 15 against Oklahoma State, 17 against TCU, 16 against Texas Tech and Kansas. Like, it had been a pretty solid run of games here for him. And he really does need to get on track because he's an important piece for them because, like you said, he's their most consistent backcourt presence. Like, you can count on Ish Wainwright to do some distributing from, like, the high post, the mid post, maybe even the corners on cutters and stuff. But, like, they really need LeConte to be able to handle the ball because I'm not like a huge Jake Lindsey guy. I'm not a big King McClure guy. Like, they need something here to go right, and they need LeConte to be the guy that leads it because John Motley can only do so much.
Yeah. You know who Jake Lindsey reminds me of? He reminds me of what Casey Benson was last year for Oregon.
He does. That's fair.
Yeah, I think Benson did a little bit more for last season's Oregon team. So I think, if anything, you're kind of hoping that Lindsey can make that progression throughout his career. As much he's going to be more of like a figure on a periphery this season, a good one at that. But like you said, it's a little bit much to ask him to do heavy lifting if LeComte is struggling.
Yeah, it is. And, Jake Lindsey is still like a sophomore. He's not super old. Like, maybe he can grow into that role, but he's not there yet. Monte Morris has been a stud, though, throughout Big 12 play, and I feel like he has not gotten the recognition that he deserves in a lot of ways. I mean, I feel like maybe Jawan Evans kind of overshadowed him, and Frank Mason is overshadowing everyone in that league right now. But Iowa State's won 5 in a row, and it's been largely on the back of Monte Morris, who, he's put up something like 35 assists versus 4 turnovers in that time.
Yeah, I don't think there's a point guard in America where you feel more secure with the ball in his hands. I'm not saying he's the best point guard in the country, but like you said, he's not turning the ball over. He's turned the ball over 4 times this entire month. Like, that's insane. And 2 of those turnovers came in an overtime win at Texas Tech. Like, that's absolutely insane for a college point guard. I don't care what year he is eligibility-wise. To do that and to be as efficient as Morris has been throughout the season, just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I don't – it's kind of dumbfounding to me in a way because, like, on some level I look at turnovers as, like, okay, if your turnover number is too low, you're probably not taking enough chances. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But with him, it's not like that. Like, he does make the right read almost every time, and it's not like he's running a conservative scheme that isn't very good offensively. I mean, this is a top 20 offense in the country that just doesn't turn the ball over. They shoot the 3 ball well, and they really just take care of business on that end. Like, he's a really impressive player that I feel like a lot of people he's a bigger name. Like, I think he was maybe a preseason All-American this year, or maybe like a second-team preseason All-American. But, like, he got forgotten in the shuffle at some point this year, and it's not deserving. I mean, he's been remarkable to me. Yeah,
because I think part of it is just perfect storm, so to speak, having so many talented freshmen come in that play the position.
Yep.
Of course, they're going to get their praise, and you had some other veterans as well. The guy's won 2 Big 12 tournament titles, been to 2 Sweet 16s. I wouldn't be shocked if he added a 3rd in each category this season because of the leadership that he provides to that team. I think Deontay Burton's played really good basketball of late as well. So Iowa State's going to be one of those teams. I think Iowa State and Minnesota, for me, are the two teams that I really think can get into March and kind of wreak some havoc in the NCAAs.
See, like, it's so funny because I don't like any other piece on this Iowa State team. Like, I genuinely don't like any of the other players as basketball players. Like, I'm sure they're all great kids, but, like, I think Naz Long's really limited. I think that Deonte Burton is maddening to watch on a basketball floor because he's been better over the last, like, 5 or 6 games, but he's just so inefficient in so many ways. And
if you hate the Long, too, you're not going to like him at all.
Right. Like, you know, like Nick Babb has been pretty inefficient. He's still young, but like, I think he'll figure it out, but like, he's still not there yet. Like, I don't like any of the pieces on this team, but because they have Monte Morris, like, I feel like they can get to a second weekend just because you have that lead guard who can do so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Miami picked up a big week against Duke. I will ask you the question I asked everyone whenever they come on this podcast. Is Duke back?
I don't think Duke left. I just think they kind of are who they are at this point. You know, I know Grayson Allen's got the ankle injury that they've got to figure out. You know, he couldn't play yesterday. They're going to need him at some point. Obviously, their offense struggled mightily against Miami yesterday. I think, if anything, these last 2 losses put to bed the idea of them going on a run and grabbing a 1 seed. I thought that was kind of far-fetched to begin with, but now we don't have to worry about that anymore, I think. They could be a really dangerous, 3 through 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. Don't get me wrong on that, but I don't know if I can hop on board with the people out in Vegas in terms of having them as a favorite to win a national title.
It's crazy to me that they're the favorite right now to win a national title. Like, they play in the same league. They play like 5 miles from North Carolina, who is, I know that they beat North Carolina at home, but like, that North Carolina team is playing so much better basketball than they are right now in every conceivable way, I think. Like, it's weird. I would not say that Duke is back in terms of being a losing team or anything. I think that, Miami is just a tough matchup for them. I mean, Miami has now beaten them, in my opinion, at least. I know that like the first half in this game was pretty close, but like they've beaten them in 3 of 4 halves now. Outside of that crazy run that Duke went on in the second half, the first time these two teams played. Like, this is a really, really good team that is a difficult matchup problem for a lot of others because of their athleticism. Like, Bruce Brown is a kid that I genuinely would take in the first round if he declared for the draft this year. I don't know if NBA people like would necessarily go that far, but I will tell you, like, he is on their radar and they are fans of his athleticism. But like, I would just take a shot on him and hope it kind of works out. That kid can play. He is athletic. He's tough. He has a high motor. He defends. He can even play like a little bit of point guard. He can shoot a little bit now. I am a huge Bruce Brown fan. And I think that that's the kind of freshman that, you looked at a Malachi Richardson last year. I think Bruce Brown this year is better than Malachi Richardson was last year. And that's the kind of guy that took Syracuse on a big run in the NCAA tournament. Yeah,
I could see that. And, in terms of occurrences within a season, I think one of the unintended positives for Miami may have been having Jaquan Newton suspended because they had to put the ball in Bruce Brown's hands even more than they were. Davon Reed, three-year captain, very solid perimeter player for them.
Yep.
Amari Murphy, they've got really good pieces. Like you said, the very athletic team, they can give you absolute hell in ball screens just because of the number of guys who can handle the basketball, and their bigs are mobile as well. And also a top 20 defensive team, too. So Miami's a team that, they could very well get hot, get to the second weekend.
Yeah, Larinaga also, that staff has done a great job over the years in terms of teaching ball screens as well. You just look at the guys who've had success there, like Angel Rodriguez. That staff does a really good job. It's a really underrated staff around the country, I think. In terms of some other games that happened here, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about North Carolina really quickly, I guess, because this was a huge week for them. They go out and beat Louisville and kind of take control of the ACC in a way. Then they just manhandle Pitt on Saturday. But is North Carolina, like, maybe under the radar the best team in the country?
I can definitely see that argument. You look at their offensive rebounding ability with those big men. They're the best offensive rebounding team in the country.
Yep.
They're a better shooting team than they were, last season and the year prior. Joel Berry II, he hit a bit of a lull. I think it's because of injury. He wasn't healthy in the middle of the year, but he's back on track. Theo Penson's a huge piece for them. To have that athletic wing who can kind of defend at the 2 or the 3, wherever they need him to be. That team, I agree with you. I think they're right there on that short list for the best teams in the country, and I would not be shocked if they won a national title at all.
Yeah, I mean, coming into that game against Louisville, I thought Louisville was probably the better team of the two, but North Carolina just handled them in a way that I was not expecting defensively. Part of this is that Louisville just doesn't have a ton of offensive firepower if Donovan Mitchell isn't going, but it was just really impressive to see how North Carolina found a way to clamp down on them defensively in a way that I didn't know that they really necessarily could. And the thing that North Carolina does better than, it's West Virginian in a way almost, the way that they create more possessions than you. They offensive rebound like crazy. They do a great job limiting turnovers. They defensive rebound, and they just get more shots up than you do. It's really difficult to win games when the other team is averaging 10 more shots than you are per game. And, this team doesn't necessarily get to the foul line, but whenever you're creating that many more field goal attempts than other teams, it's just going to be so much easier for you.
Yeah, and also, if we go the full 7 days, they held Virginia to 41 points. I know Virginia is not a good offensive team, really up and down on that end of the floor, but you hold any top 25 team to 41 points over 40 minutes.
Yep.
That's pretty impressive. They get Virginia again on Monday in Charlottesville, so that'll be an interesting game to keep track of. But the way that Carolina is playing on both ends of the court, I think Roy Williams will very well have his 3rd national title in the next month or so.
Yeah, it wouldn't be crazy. Kentucky goes out and beats Florida 76-66. This was kind of a weird up and down game where Kentucky started so slowly and just you thought that without De'Aaron Fox in the lineup, who missed this game, they could kind of get out of hand a little bit in the favor of Florida, but that's not what happened. I mean, Malik Monk, can you just kind of remember a guy who was so capable of going so, as Kyle Tucker put it, nuclear at any given time?
I really can't. And the funny thing about Monk is that I think you and a few other people have touched about it when it comes to his NBA potential. What does he give you if he's not scoring? It's like if he goes off, like we've seen the Carolina game and against Florida yesterday, he's had times where he's gone off offensively, and it's ridiculous.
And by the way, he was awful in the first half.
Yeah.
On Saturday. He was terrible. He had I think he missed his first 6 shots. He had 5 turnovers in the first half. He was terrible. Yeah. And then he decidedly was not terrible coming down the stretch. He was the exact opposite of terrible.
Yeah, he made just about everything he put up. I think when Kentucky was struggling earlier this month, one of their big issues was him not rebounding, and especially that blowout loss at Florida where they got punked on the boards. That changed in a big way yesterday. Part of it being John Egbunou's torn ACL for Florida, but I thought Bam Adebayo did a really good job on the glass for them. And just if they can bring that collective fight, they can be a handful. But doing that consistently has been an issue for them at times.
Yeah, and the other thing about Malik Monk that I do want to point out here is that you did bring up the thing that I've brought up throughout the whole time here is that what does he do if he's not, shooting the lights out for a team? He did a lot of really differentiated things without De'Aaron Fox on the floor, and it makes me wonder if his ceiling in that way is a little bit different. He had 5 assists in this game. He slashed a little bit better in the half court. He had that really nice pump fake and then go right toward the baseline and just rise up and keep rising for a dunk. It was a really impressive play to me. And it is really kind of, it makes me wonder, is Kentucky limiting him in a little, a small way? Not in a bad way because they're obviously a really good team, but should they be telling him to maybe look for the pass a little bit more often or, look for your slash a little bit more often? And I think that, Calipari wants him to keep driving the ball, but, maybe not having De'Aaron Fox in the lineup, and Kentucky's definitely not a better team without De'Aaron Fox, but like maybe not having De'Aaron Fox in the lineup kind of unlocked a thing in him that makes him realize, hey, I can get space to slash a little bit, and when I can do it, I should go.
Yeah, I think it was Tony Delk who suggested this earlier in the week, where maybe they put Michael Mulder in the starting lineup in place of Isaiah Briscoe. It's an interesting thing to consider because Mulder really doesn't need to have the ball in his hands much.
Yep.
And that could be a way where you free up more opportunities for Malik Monk to make some things happen off the bounce, not only for himself, but also for others. But
it really spaced the floor.
Yeah, exactly. Mulder's a capable perimeter shooter. Briscoe isn't. So, obviously, I think you wonder if Kentucky may possibly consider that. And if they were to make that type of shift, how would that go down with Briscoe, most importantly? A guy who's expected to be a leader and in the starting lineup to move to a bench role, how would he accept that? Will he accept that if they were to go that route? But, yeah, I think that would be something that the more you think about it, the more it makes sense to possibly free up Monk to do even more for them.
Yeah, I think that I agree with you and with Tony Delk that that's probably the route I would go, as long as Briscoe was okay with it.
Yeah.
Like, and wasn't going to cause like an issue about it. And I would be surprised if he would. I mean, this is a kid that is pretty known to be a like good kid within that locker room. I'm sorry, go ahead, Raph.
He's a winner too. He won in high school, so I think it would be something that he would ultimately accept if they were to do that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I mean, you even saw it yesterday, just the space that Michael Mulder creates. Like, he went 1 for 6 and like missed 3 3-pointers. And, he's still just the amount of space he created just by being on the floor and people thinking of him as a knockdown shooter. And he is a knockdown shooter. Like, he's had a bad day yesterday. But like, just the space he created, it opened up for Malik Monk, and the other person it opened up for was Bam, who had a monster game. I mean, he was a little bit more versatile in the post than I think we've seen him this year.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. He was more assertive in terms of the moves he made, getting the basketball and going. Sometimes it seems like the wheels are churning for him when he gets the ball in the post.
Yep.
Yeah, so now he just went yesterday. And also the 15 rebounds, that was huge for him. So maybe this is something where he kind of uses this as a stepping stone to even bigger and better things as the season winds down here.
What team do you think had the bigger home loss for their bubble chances, TCU or Clemson yesterday?
Please get Clemson out of here for the last time, man. I'm sorry. Look, I look at their resume, and it just seems like there's this love affair with close losses with this team.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, who they beat? They beat Georgia. Georgia's not a tournament team, I don't think. They beat Alabama, which did a good job of shooting itself in the foot this week. South Carolina's probably their best win, and the 2 wins over Wake Forest. So, like, what have they really done to merit discussion on the bubble? So I think Clemson, once and for all, they're probably done. I think TCU's probably on life support. I hope Clemson's done. Like, no disrespect to their program, but come on, man. You can't possibly tell me that's a bubble team. I'm sorry.
Here's what I'll say. I think Clemson is a top 40-ish team in college basketball.
Yeah.
But they haven't done enough. They don't deserve to be on the bubble at this stage. They're going to have to win the ACC tournament, I think, or at least get to the ACC tournament final. The hottest team in college basketball to me right now in a high major conference is probably Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State has now won 9 of 10 games in what is just an insane Big 12 this year. How ridiculous is that run to you? Like, how incredibly impressive is that, the way that they've been able to totally turn their season around recently?
It's one of the best in-season coaching jobs in the country, I think. Because when they were 0-6 in the Big 12, all you could really think was, oh boy, it's going to be a long first season for Brad Underwood. Even with guys like Evans and Forte, their front court lacks depth, but they've been able to figure some things out there in terms of, Jeffrey Carroll, Leighton Hammond's helping them out, but it's been incredible what they've managed to do within the conference, which I think is right there with the ACC in terms of the best conferences in the country. Now you get Iowa State and Kansas to close out the regular season. I wouldn't be shocked if they at minimum split those two games. Which one they get, I'm not sure, but the job that they've done within the season has been incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I keep coming back to Jeffrey Carroll, who for me is the absolute most improved player in the country. No ifs, ands, or buts about this. Like, Jeffrey Carroll is a guy that, like, I did not know who he was coming into the year. And then I looked at, like, I do a pretty good job of following, like, who these dudes are, like, even up through high school. Like, I can tell you, like, top 150 recruits most of the time in high school. And I didn't know who Jeffrey Carroll was. And I looked at him, after he had a few big games, and, his stuff last year wasn't impressive. Yeah. And this kid is, if he is not their best player, because Jawan Evans is probably their best player, like, he is an all Big 12 player in a league with a lot of really, really talented guys. It's a remarkable turnaround for a kid that, like I said, I did not know who you were last year, Jeffrey Carroll. You are an impressive player.
Yeah, definitely. I remember talking to Brad Underwood during the summer for a blue ribbon. It's like, what are you going to be able to do with your front court? Because they really didn't have bodies.
Right.
Obviously, the tragic passing away of Tyreek Coger impacted that as well. But what guys have been able to do. Carroll's 6'6". He might be a little shorter, and he's still got the high top fade going, so he's at 6'6" with that. But what they've been able to do on the boards, kind of hold their own. They're top 10 in the country in offensive rebounding percentage.
Yep.
They give up a lot of offensive rebounds because of that lack of size, but they've been able to get some of those back on the other end. That's been huge for them.
They play hard, man.
Yeah, yep.
Another team that I wanted to mention quickly, Providence, is a team that I wrote off kind of midway through the year. I think that they were something like, 11-7, and then they were 13-9 and 14-11. And I was like, all right, like, do I really have to keep paying attention to this team that, lost Chris Dunn and Ben Bentel last year and is probably not going to make the NCAA tournament? Like, they have now won 4 games in a row against Butler, Xavier, Creighton, Marquette. They're probably on the right side of the bubble at 18-11 and 8-8 or something in the pack or in the Big East. Like, this is one of the younger teams in high major college basketball this season. Ed Cooley, I know that Chris Holtman's done a great job at Butler and is very deserving of what will probably be a Big East Coach of the Year award. I would vote for Ed Cooley for this award. What he lost and has been able to build around this year at Providence is totally remarkable to me. It's absolutely unbelievable that he is taking what is the second youngest team in the Big East right now and probably going to take it to an NCAA tournament appearance.
Yeah, for the record, I take Holtman, the Big East Coach of the Year, but Cooley's right there in second for me. He just has a way of just working his magic with this team. It's happened the last few years. And I think in Kyron Cartwright, they've got one of the most improved guards in the country.
He was not good last year. Like, I would just flat out say it. I did not like what I saw of him last year.
I think a small part of that may have been, you have a ball-dominant point guard in Chris Dunn, but playing against Dunn in practice and learning from Coach Cooley and that staff every day has obviously helped Cartwright.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that you feel comfortable when he has the ball in his hands down the stretch. Those young guys are getting older. They're getting better. I thought Alpha Diallo was underrated on the grassroots scene. He played with Deron Davis, who's at Indiana.
Yep.
I thought he was a bit overshadowed there. Thought he was a steal for Providence. He's starting to find his way a bit down the stretch. And I think we should spend more time talking about Providence and less talking about Clemson.
Well, I think that we can stop talking about Clemson for sure. They're in some deep trouble here. You mentioned Minnesota. They're the last team we'll talk about here. Why do you think Minnesota can make a run? They end up winning yesterday. What was it, like 81-71 against Penn State? They're now 22-7.
Yep, 22-7. I think they won, what was it, either 8 or 9 games last year. Richard Pitino's pulled off quite the turnaround with this group where you really didn't know where this thing was headed after last season. You had the suspensions for that blowout loss at Rutgers. Who knew if he was going to try to jump ship or what? They stuck with it. Now they're looking at the possibility of having a double bye in the Big Ten tournament. Nate Mason is criminally underrated as a point guard.
He was last year too, I thought.
Yep. He's criminally underrated, and you got Reggie Lynch in the middle. Can be a bit foul prone at times, but he blocked 11 shots yesterday.
Yep.
Like, if you're Penn State, that's got to be like bad flashbacks of being like a summer camper as a kid, and the counselor's just tossing you a shot every chance they get. Like, I couldn't believe that one guy would block 11 shots, and most importantly, he didn't commit a single foul.
That's incredible. That is absolutely the most ridiculous stat I have heard this year.
Yeah, so you look at him, Jordan Murphy, a really athletic swingman for them. Amir Coffey's a really good freshman. Dupree McBrayer, only a sophomore. This is a team, I saw someone put out a list. They think Minnesota's going to be the preseason favorite next year in the Big Ten. I can see that, but I think they still got a lot more they can get done this year.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I was a big Minnesota fan coming into the year, and I thought they were going to be an NCAA tournament team. Like, I believed in this team, despite the fact that they lost all those games last year, because I bought into Jordan Murphy kind of taking a leap and Amir Coffey coming in. And what a lot of people didn't realize about Reggie Lynch, because I feel like, he had the off-the-court issues at the beginning of the year, but this is a kid that at Illinois State, he led the country in block rate each of the 2 years he was there.
Yep.
And he's doing it again this year now at Minnesota. He is just a ridiculous rim protector, totally shuts down the paint. He's the reason that they have a top 15 defense in the country right now, because guards, Nate Mason's also an incredible defender, and he absolutely deserves credit. But like, guards feel like they can be more not risk averse. They can be the exact opposite of risk averse. They can be risk taking guards on the perimeter and trying to force turnovers. And, that's kind of what you see here. They're a top 25 team in the country. They actually don't force that many turnovers. So I just lied. But they're still a very good team in terms of getting out on the perimeter and being aggressive whenever they feel like they can at least just kind of let guys go toward Reggie Lynch and he's going to shut it down.
Yeah, I think the key for them moving forward is just, I thought they did a good job of this yesterday, is not leaving Lynch on an island defensively. Obviously he can clean up mistakes, but you don't want to be in a situation where he's got a guy coming at him with a full head of steam, because that's when he commits those fouls that puts him on the bench and leaves Minnesota at a disadvantage. So that's going to be the biggest key for them going forward. But the way that they're playing right now, I don't know if I'd want to run into them in the Big Ten or the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you see what Purdue struggles with sometimes with Caleb Swanigan in terms of him ending up on an island on the perimeter and being forced to guard ball screens. They've kind of tried to do some interesting things where if they notice the guy, that Swanigan is guarding is just going to repeatedly set screens, they'll do some kind of cross matching where they'll have Vince Edwards kind of come up and try and shade the guy away, but it always gets them into rotation. It gets them kind of effed up defensively. Mm-hmm. Minnesota does a great job of protecting Reggie Evans in a way that is, it's difficult to do as a defensive team, but I think Richard Pitino deserves a lot of credit for the way that he has figured out a way to build a defense around Reggie Lynch that last year wasn't even in the top 150 in the country.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of what Minnesota can do. I agree with Raph. They have a good shot to get to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, depending on the right matchups. Do you have anything else you want to talk about here before we get out, Raph?
No, I think we've touched on just about everything. Kind of looking forward to round 3 of Wichita State, Illinois State, if we get that next Sunday. But other than that, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Raph, do you want to tell them where they can find you and find your work?
You can find my work over FanRag Sports, and I'm on Twitter at Raphielle J. Raphielle and the letter J.
Yeah, I've not seen someone more dedicated to just consistently talking basketball than Raph. So if that's what you're looking for in terms of a Twitter follow, I would totally suggest following Raph. He's a great follow, really smart guy. Like I said, I genuinely learned something when I talk to him, which is not all that common in this industry. You can find the Game Theory podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, Stitcher, Android, whatever app you use to listen to podcasts. I'm sure we are up there. If you would leave ratings and reviews, hopefully of the 5-star variety, I would really appreciate that. Until next time, we will probably be back on Wednesday to talk, maybe NBA, maybe college basketball. We will see what exciting news happens throughout the week, but we are powered by CLNS Radio, and until next time, we will talk soon. Bye.